Right, well, good evening. My name's Simon Lovesey, the founder of Restart Sailing, and joined my colleague John Emmett, just straight back from Tokyo, I think, John, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm glad you said straight back rather than fresh back. But yeah, good to be here, admittedly on a Friday. Probably could have done the usual regular Thursday show, but when you're doing long flights, etc., I thought it probably wasn't worth the risk. So yeah, here I am back in sunny Weymouth.
Yes, and again, looking at Restart Sailing, and I think more of a reset sailing, but we'll come on to that later. But hopefully, we're nearly through the three stages. I think obviously lots of international competition going on. That's starting to rebuild.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the international stuff that they've had quite a lot of practice now at the high level of how to run it in the safest possible way. And when we come onto the slides in a minute, you see actually the UK is in probably a very good situation in terms of ballot outcomes, but it's certainly no time to be complacent. But actually, what I'm most looking forward to is just getting back to club sailing and that grassroots stuff. Because that is the future of the sport. And one of the things which always worries me is when the average age of members at a sailing club gradually creeps up. So I think we've got a very good guest to talk about the youth, or I should probably say junior classes today. So
Yeah, so it'd be good to catch up and talk about the inspiration of the Olympics. I think a lot of youngsters will be inspired by what they've seen in the last week or so, haven't they?
I hope so. I mean, this show's all about resetting sailing, whatever. But I can assure you, the Olympics is definitely not what most people think it is when you're inside. And this year was something truly, completely different to anything I've ever done before. But,
Yeah. So looking at the cases, the graph is sort of still a bit stubborn, isn't it?
the third wave is coming down
Yeah.
in terms of the number of daily infections. There's obviously a bit of a lag with the number of deaths, which are still going up, but it's actually in real terms very low. If you think about, unfortunately, we lose people in road traffic accidents and other illness and injuries and stuff. So, just it's a time not to be complacent, but I think we're in a pretty
Oops.
good place, and that's mainly down to the vaccination program. I think, of course, the
Yeah.
summer months do help, sunshine and being outside in the great outdoors.
Yes. So we've done the yes. Oops. Sticky fingers today. But
The slides just want to to run through.
yeah.
Um,
So I think hopefully we're getting to normality, as we were saying earlier. We probably need to rebuild some of these slides, but I think important to remind people that we're not quite there, are we? I think it's a sort of a
yeah, I mean,
cautious forward, isn't it?
the good thing about travel is if you have been double vaccinated and you are coming, for example, from an amber country, you now just need a day to test, and things like that, are going to make it easier to move around. Probably the advice is still be don't travel unless you absolutely have to, but it's up to you to decide what warrants that. But it certainly is getting easier and easier, and those 3 hour queues in Heathrow, touchwood, do seem to be a thing of the past now.
Yeah, and I think people generally are still taking cautions, aren't they? And adhering to a lot of the guidance that sort of we've had. Okay, so lots of sailing going on. Picture of Cows Week. They've had a booming time. I think we talk about some of the nationals coming up, and
But it was actually quite hard to pin down guests in August because everybody was involved in the national championship or something somewhere. But actually, as long as you've got a good internet connection, which we are lucky to have in about 99% of the UK, you should be fine. I mean, I do a lot of the reports I do just using a mobile phone and a pair of earbuds. And the key thing is just as long as you have good internet. So
yeah,
hopefully we'll be okay.
yeah. And hopefully we'll be removing away from the events cancelled sort of slide. Still a few events being cancelled, but it was interesting to see what's happening with festivals and insurance and things like that, which may help things in terms of giving stability, because they've been in a similar situation in terms of not knowing really to go ahead and the risk of disruption. And I think the government's stepping in a bit to help out, which we might see some benefits here. Right. So moving on. So, I think welcome the oldest Optimist sailor going, I think, isn't it?
So you've had a pretty busy week. I guess today was blown off.
Yeah, today was definitely beyond limits, and we were able to make an early call on that, which is really useful because people have got a good long way to travel, and there's a lot to do to close down the event. I mean, to pick up on your riff to kick off with, John, that you said fresh from, or not fresh from.
Not
I
fresh
think it
from
was
at all.
not fresh from the Opry Nationals. First of all, because I'm still here in Weymouth, and secondly, because I'm not feeling that fresh. But of those involved in the organisation, I'm probably one of the freshest. As the vice chair, you get a bit of a relatively free ride. But David Fletcher and his team of volunteers have really worked hard to deliver a great event.
Yeah. And what sort of numbers have been there then, Matt, today?
So we had a total of 223 sailors across our 4 fleets, 82 in seniors, 52 11 and below in juniors, 37 in our racing regatta fleet, and 52 in our coach regatta fleet. So we're doing our best to put those new sailors, those new young sailors, into the system. It's really interesting how that breakdown looks, because I would probably say that racing regatta is down because that's the gap that driven by last year's COVID. That's going to be quite hard for us to fill, and I think we're going to see that across a lot of the junior classes, actually, that there's a bit of a missing year where it was quite hard to get on with the sport, and they're not there. We're going to have to wrestle with that in terms of delivery as a class association to them and for them.
Yeah. But encouraging to see the real young ones. That sounds like a booming number, isn't
it? Yeah, really good. And so the nationals for us is the opportunity to connect the international to the grassroots. And we're really conscious as a class association that we need to work for all Optimist sailors in the UK. That's quite hard to do, because it's actually quite hard to contribute to anything to a club level flotilla to bring those sailors on. We can have the system of coaches, we can help them find that to do the training, but actually to do the full spectrum is not easy, and therefore when we come to the nationals, we can do that. And here, for example, we invested quite a lot of resource. We switched coaches down from racing regatta into the coached regatta to try and bring that on. And it does connect with the international sailors, less so this year. So we only had 8 countries represented. Normally we'd have more than 15, and normally we'd have more than 300 sailors. And quite a lot of that gap is the international competitors. But that's quite inspirational, and I think so. We might see a bit of video here from the opening ceremony, I guess, in due course, and a lot of flag waving, and it's brilliant. I always get quite emotional about that moment when you see all the flags being deployed and all the local club flags, and we're making that connection between the sort of the top level of Optimist sailors and who've travelled from the Cayman Islands or Bermuda, the Bahamas, Belgium, Hong Kong, even. Although she won the prize for the Scottish sailor, I'm not quite sure what the story was there, but she was top Scot as well as racing under a Hong Kong sail number. I know she did travel in, so there's clearly a connection there. But it's a great environment for them, and quite inspirational as they look at it. And I'd say some of that really rubs off. It's been interesting to see the statistics for the medalists at the Olympics. All but 2 had sailed the Optimist in somewhat
75% or something, wasn't it? I remember seeing that.
Yeah. 75% had been to a continental or world championship, and all but 2 had raced at national level. So you see that connection, and then you actually sort of see sailors from other countries in your fleet sailing on your home waters, and I think it does help to make that connection. I know it does because so my daughter's been coaching in the coach fleet, and some of her sailors have talked about it. Oh, there's the Belgium He did really well at the Worlds, didn't he? And that's the 9-year-old. So it's really good to see.
Yeah. And were they watching the early breakfast viewings in Spinnakers?
Yeah, there was. Yeah, there was a bit of that. Certainly for the big medal race day, there was a big crowd. Yeah, and loving that. I mean, it's odd because normally those heroes are hanging around in Weymouth, and you kind of get. I remember the first regional junior champs we did down here, and Giles Scott came and presented the prizes, and you know what a wonderful moment for the kids looking up at Giles.
Figuratively as well as literally.
Yeah. Once they've done that when they see him in the boat park, it kind of all goes quiet and they look. And we haven't had that this year because they're all at the Olympics, which is just as inspirational, just a little further away from home.
Yeah. No, it is great how sort of inclusive sailing is. You don't really get that with other sports, do you? That mixing and rubbing shoulders.
Yeah. My lad Johnny was here for for some training when Bart Bash was on a couple of years ago, and so Aaron Holman from the British sailing team gave him his 470 and his crew, and took Johnny's Optimist for a while. I did say to Johnny, why did you give it back? Why didn't you race the 470? Because he wasn't going to catch you in an Optimist, but he thought that was pushing it too far.
And what's around the corner for the class now? Because it seems like we're going a bit back into, and I hate to use the word normality, but is it all steam ahead? And how do you see it now?
Yeah, I think so. So you're absolutely right. We can't be complacent, and we're certainly not complacent. We've always taken the approach. It was a really sort of early strategic approach for us to say how we're going to do this is it legal, is it safe, is it appropriate, in that order, and I think doing that enabled us to be a little bit more positive, and so too early to cancel events as we were coming out last year. We were really disappointed that we got 140 sailors together at Datchet last October, and then had absolutely no wind on the first day, and it was quite tricky because we had the potential to hold them ashore waiting for breeze, but we kind of had to say no, we'll leave them on the water rather than AP over H and wait, because really as soon as they come ashore we know that's going to people are going to mix. We're going to break social distancing rules. It's inevitable that will happen. But actually, we could keep an eye on them, make sure they weren't rafting, and if they're not rafting, it's actually quite hard to get 2 meters of someone in an Optimist with the boom out. And so that was our sort of first stage, and having done that and seen how we could do it and gain confidence in it and the things that we needed to do. We have kind of transitioned towards a new normal. We ran a spring championship. We didn't win a spring championship, but then we did something at Easter at Gratham. We went back to Gratham for our early summers. We ran the selections here at Weymouth. So lots of procedural change, lots of being very careful. But it does feel like we're getting back to normal, and we've got our normal sort of program of national level events to run into the autumn.
Good to hear. Really good to hear.
Yeah. And on the question of appropriateness, the difficult decisions became, what do you do about sailors that can't come to an event? How do you manage that side of things rather than the picture of is it safe in a COVID environment? Because I think you gain that confidence, and it was quite interesting. I've been the class's COVID officer, and so dealing with the framework for the return to sport, and leading the risk assessments and helping convert them into process change with the team. And the more you work through it, the more confident you become. The thing that I think we had to just come back to here and really remind people about was the what we called the symptomatic sailor procedure, which was missing in quite a lot of the documentation that I saw. And of course that's not a simple problem for us, because it's not one boat in most cases. It's the boat. They can't pack it up themselves. The parents have got to come and pack it up. There might well be siblings who you also need to extract. So that was quite a challenging one to think through. Here, and I think it's an indication of the shift that we're in, it was more likely that it would be a ping that would result in us having to pull a sailor off the course, probably than actually being symptomatic. And I'm going to sort of touch some wood somewhere in the van. That so far we've not had a case or a ping, which has been really good.
We've put some of that paperwork up that you kindly sent to us is on the Restart Sailing group if people wanted to look, and they can download that, because I thought it was very well put together, and that's one of the things with Restart Sailing, to help clubs follow clubs and classes follow classes, rather than everybody having to learn.
Yeah, and I really appreciate your role in that. And I know we've had some sort of late night messenger conversations about bits and pieces, and there's been some good advice and really good sharing before we got to the stage of doing those documents. It's just really glad that there's a community that's been out there and understood that we've got a sport that in the COVID environment is relatively safe, and we can put things in place to manage the lots of the bits that aren't on the water. It's been really good for the community, and I think it's really funny. So if you look at the Optimist piece, I think lots of Optimist sailors would say they're quite used to getting changed at the car in the winter before up to sailing. To adults, that was a new thing and quite difficult, but a lot of kids have been doing that for a long time.
Yeah, and hopefully we're now in much better shape if things start going the wrong way over the winter. I think the whole sport has shown it is safe and can adapt, and I think all the work that everyone's done is fantastic, and the fact that we can share it is even better.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm looking at the images on the right hand side there, and there's it's so important for the kids to be able to have fun and relax and come back to a normality.
And have sweets by the look of it.
Yeah, and have a lot of sweets. I mean, there's been, it's not the BBC, right? So I can say there's been a lot of Haribo in Weymouth this week, and that's probably just by the coaches.
Fuel for Haribo. Right. So moving on. Okay.
So thanks very much for your time, Matt. I'm going to do my little chat. But do feel free if you have any comments. I thought this was particularly relevant. I found it difficult. Last show did fitness, so this show makes sense to do diet. But what I found difficult is since I've been involved with coaching, the word diet or the meaning seems to have changed. So diet for me has always been, and I guess one of the stricter definitions, it's what you eat, it's what you put into your body. But in recent years, it's sort of taken this subtext that diet is about restricting what you eat and eating less and losing weight, and that's not what diet is. Diet is, in a pure form, it's what you're eating, and you can have a healthy or more or less diet, or weight gain or weight loss, etc. But one of the key things, and this is an extract from Joe Glanfield, who's one of those people who is very much behind the scenes with whatever it was, five medals for the UK, 3 gold. He's very much more, but he was saying, that to sail the boat your natural size is very important, and when you're looking at optimists and transitioning, and also working out what final boat you sail, that's very important. And the hydration was also incredibly important in Japan. I don't think you ever really stopped drinking, which is quite interesting when you're also wearing a mask at all times. But the hydration for sailors, it's a very important thing. And if people are trying to keep their weight down or or whatnot, the idea of not drinking. When we move from the summer months into the winter months, it's also really important to remember this, because when it's hot and sunny and we're sweating, I think it's quite natural for people to drink. And the point I would make, and it's a very key point, that if you get thirsty, you're already slightly dehydrated and you're already going to have a slight loss in performance. And you have that situation from Joe's background. He talked about the lead up to, I believe it was Qingdao, where they suddenly found out that they were losing several kilos, and they wonder why they were struggling to sail as well as they could. But the winter, it's really important to stay hydrated as well. That may mean it's more difficult to have toilet breaks or whatever, but you should be in that situation that you're always taking food and water with you. In COVID times, a lot of regattas have said that you can't actually give it to a support boat, but it's still something which is absolutely necessary. And for those people who got all inspired by the previous talk about fitness, I have to point out that they go absolutely hand in hand. In fact, there's a third element which we won't talk about so much, but it's about the fitness training, which is, if you like, breaking things down, and it's the diet and the sleep, which is where you improve your overall fitness. And that's something which is often overlooked in a busy society, getting enough sleep. And I can tell you, from someone who's still feeling a bit jet lagged, it's certainly not ideal. But it's really good advice there from Joe. And I think that the key part is, to be in the right boat and to really think about everything you consume. So hopefully we're going to have lots more regattas, and this is really a key part of it. So that's my bit on diet.
Okay, and some more Restart Sailing chats.
Yeah, so we had a quick chat with the indomitable Ben Flower, who was wearing a bright yellow t-shirt, and there was a small bumblebee who did indeed think he was a flower. So there's definitely one to watch, even only for the small comedy element. So he was talking about the Ilka 7 or the laser, and we're still really keen to continue to do these little chats with classes. So people drop me a line, and it's really simple. It's something like 2-3 minutes chat, and we get a bit of video. If people can send us through the highest quality video, the original video by WeTransfer or whatever, we get these little chats. And we're still looking for people to be on the main show. Just really need a good Wi-Fi connection, if at all possible, and if there's a little bit of background noise, a pair of earphones make a huge difference. And that's it. We're really keen to help the clubs and the classes just promote the sport. And for those people who are thinking they change location or they're changing class, hopefully that information is really useful. The next show will be on the 19th of August, so that's the Thursday, usual time, usual place, with Martin, and I hope as many people as possible can join for that. And remember, the group is still very much open, and hopefully we're going to have lots more sharing about the reset of sailing, because we seem pretty well, touch wood, restarted now.